So as we've mentioned, we had gainers, we had losers, and we covered all the scenarios. So I think
losers.
There's going to be a lot of really germane takeaways. Yep. So we're going to answer a couple questions too that Nate posed personally. One is, how do you notice you're doing too much? And then secondly, how long will it take for the losers to get back? And third, how do we avoid going into a deep dark hole? So we're going to try to cover this throughout the course of these scenarios.
Since it's an assessment, how can you lose?
They're losing lots. Okay. Take it away, Nate.
Okay. So first, Chad, you got a 7-watt decrease. And what was your FTP before and what did it go to?
290 down to 283.
Cool. And then for you were focusing on different sports, minimal work. You were doing weightlifting and weight training, and running. And this is very common, right? Because people say, I want to focus on different sport for a little while. What can I do? So tell us, why do you think you went down that much? How much work were you doing? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I don't think I'm managing my fatigue very well, quite simply. I think that between the three things that I'm trying to do, it's kind of, I've had a hard time working a rest day in there, because it feels like if I'm doing one thing that doesn't really overlap with the other, I should be able to do this other thing, even though I know that the systemic stress is real and I do need downtime. So I've added a couple of recovery days to each week. We'll see how that goes moving forward. But I do know that I was setting up for just about every work feeling a little bit flat, but capable. So it's that line that we talked about where it's like, I feel like I can do it today. Maybe I shouldn't, but you get into the workout and you're getting through it. It seems productive, and maybe it is for a couple of workouts, but then it starts to deteriorate. I don't know if that explains all of my loss. I do think I haven't been doing enough riding to stay where I was at. It was a bare minimum maintenance plan.
Yeah, and that's a big point, right? Like, even if you did perfect structure but didn't have enough volume, there's still a chance because of your level that you would go down.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Is that enough for you, Chad?
Yeah, just to say that I think my limitation at this moment is that focus and probably motivation are the prime obstacles, and that I don't have an event on the calendar. We don't have a date for it, so it's really hard for me to get behind any serious training. And my focus is split here 3 different ways. We had swimming to the mix eventually. Then I just don't know how I'm even going to make this happen.
That's not bad though, to have that drop while you're doing just minimal workouts.
Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay with it. Yeah, I'm not in any way depressed because of the outcome.
Okay, let's move on to Jonathan. Jonathan had a 18-watt decrease. And before we get into the reason why, John, we said whoever was going to have the biggest decrease was going to shave their head. So why don't just to get started, why don't you just run a little thing down the middle of your head so everyone can see it? And then, then we'll continue on the
really
podcast.
Happening.
Oh my gosh.
Did you guys not know?
No, I thought it was a joke.
I'm a man of my word.
Oh my goodness.
That's for sure.
Okay, so
I'm
everyone
going to turn down my gain so then you're not all blown out by a clipper. And I'm not going to do the center. I'll do a mohawk or something.
No, dude, do the center. Then we know you're going to finish it.
We have to go to a mohawk. So, okay, continue.
Okay, so
actually, let's go through mine.
Just do a little bit.
This.
Just a teeny, just like 2 seconds, so we know what's going to happen.
Don't worry about it. It's going to happen. Don't worry. See, it's coming off. Okay.
That was more like a fade. But what John had is he did some training, and then he had life got in the way, and he did home improvement. And he did a ton of fence building, manual labor.
I should have started a YouTube channel at the beginning of this, because I'd have a ton of views forever, because I've done everything you do to a house. So
Chad, what do you think happened with John?
Like you said, life intervened. So first off, I want to welcome you to my world, which is the world of home improvement, perpetual in my case. Hopefully it won't last for quite as long with you. And I'd also like to say, if you've never experienced this, then you are a pampered professional, not just a pro rider, but a pampered pro rider who has a soigneur, who has a cook, who has a masseur. I mean, all these things are handled for you because you can't avoid this situation. It's going to happen to you at some point. What Jonathan has working in his favor is that he's got a lot of history and a body that responds really well to training. So he's going to bounce back super fast. And his fitness was already riding a wave when he had to kind of ditch that wave for the moment.
Yep.
And John, you felt, it sounded like you had systemic stress, because you said in the ramp test, you just felt like you couldn't go to as deep as you did before. You said punching in a dream or underwater.
Yeah. I bet people that are listening to this have felt that, where you feel like your capability is there, but just like in a dream when you're trying to like punch and you can't connect, or trying to jump and you can't quite reach that ledge. It was close and I felt like it was there, but I just couldn't exploit it, you know? So probably plenty of things, but I think that this is a really good example of the fact that if I was just to continue with pride and I was to say like, I'm not going to drop my FTP, right? And I just kept like jumped back into training, I might have been able to suffer through for a bit, but those workouts would have been really discouraging and I wouldn't have been able to finish the workouts as prescribed. So I think that this highlights something that the ramp test is not utilized enough for, which is really to give yourself an accurate measure of where you need to be. I mean, that's the goal for every single ramp test. It's not to define yourself. It's not to do anything like that. It's instead to make your training more accurate. So when you come back from something, yeah, you can manually drop down, but you can also do a ramp test. And that's like one of the perks of it. It's not fatiguing, relatively speaking, in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, I'm excited because now my training is going to be where it needs to be. I'm starting up next week because we're listing our house this coming weekend. So yeah, unfortunately I have to shave my head, but other than that, I'm all happy about it. So yeah.
So as John comes back, what do you think you should do inside of this training plan? Because we've seen John, when he takes time off, he gets like, after like 4 workouts, he gains like 5 or 10 watts.
Yeah, I think
because of his past experience.
I think he just maintains course. I think wherever he exited, he's going to come back pretty close to that. I think, what are you doing? I know you're taking a little transitionary sort of, redirect.
Yeah. Because so nationals is effectively, I don't want to say it's canceled, but from that email, it sure sounds like it's going to be canceled for amateurs at least. And then Downeyville is canceled. That was kind of my plan B that I was going to build toward. So, and lots of folks listening to this right now, Leadville's now canceled, Steamboat Gravel Grinders canceled as well. So definitely sad. And a lot of people are probably having to change things around. So I decided that rather than focusing on things or putting hopes on things that I can't control, I'm going to do something maybe a little silly, but I think it's going to be a ton of fun. And the first week of September, I'm going to do a 5-day mountain bike stage race. It's going to be something that I can do after work, except for one day is going to be all day. It starts out with a prologue, and it's all on like trails that I know are going to be minimally populated and safe. But starts out with a prologue. It'll be about 20-minute, really hard effort. After that, a short track. And I don't know what I'm going to do for the short track. Maybe give our 3-year-old Simon an air horn, and then every time he hits it, I have to attack myself. I'm not sure, but just to simulate something like that. And then after that, a cross-country Olympic race. That'll be like a 90-minute race, and we have a really good location for that won't have any people on the trails. And then I'm doing a cross-country marathon race the next day that should be around 4.5 hours. So that's going to be like, it's basically like if Carson City Off-Road had no limitations on what it could do with crossing highways and that sort of stuff. That's more or less what I'm doing. And then the final day is going to be a hill climb time trial. And it's like I want to say it's a 6,000 foot climb nonstop. So all mountain bike, and it goes up to 11,000 feet. So it's going to be my own little stage race. And I basically just used Plan Builder. I plugged in that stage race, and it's not anything that I'll be racing against anybody. But if you're listening to this and you want some sort of a goal, you should put one down at that time too, because it might be fun. And I just put that on my calendar. Then after that, set right into it. So what Plan Builder has me doing is it had me taking a week of 2 weeks of sweet spot base and then going back into build. And instead, I guess what I'm doing is basically just going to jump right back into build. And then after those 2 weeks are done, I should be doing those 2 weeks right now, but house stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at.
So there it is. You basically gave yourself an A event, used Plan Builder to reconstruct your training, and you're just jumping right back in.
Yep, totally.
John, what about Grinduro on September 11th? You could probably do, that sounds just like your event.
Yeah, it really doesn't get me too excited though. I just, I like riding that area. I wouldn't want to ride it on a gravel bike. Like, I don't know. It's okay. It just doesn't excite me. And that's kind of an important thing for us all to remember. Like this year, now that our events are canceled and things are changing, we should ride bikes for why we want to ride bikes. And just because if you had some big event and you've always done that big event, or you're doing it for some reason other than true like excitement and internal motivation that you have, now's a good time to change it around. And I love nothing more than mountain bike stage racing. So that's what I want to do for this one. So even though I won't be racing anybody, I'm going to come up with different mechanisms to attack myself and make it really hard. So it'll still be an absolute blast. It'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, so let's go to the next one.
Start the clippers while you guys cover that. I need to turn my gain down so I don't blow everybody's ears out.
Next, let's talk about Brandon. Brandon is our resident fast guy. He's at 5.1 watts per kilo at elevation, so maybe 5.3 or 5.4 at sea level. He had a good solid week, but he gained one watt. John's doing it. If you're on the live stream, Amber, just giggle in the background. Brandon only gained 1 watt, so pretty much the same. Although he did get a PR up Geiger yesterday, which is our measuring climb here. So Chad, what do you think happened? And Brandon too is a very high level athlete, pro triathlete, Olympic training center athlete, ran in college.
Yeah. So he's a 5+ watt per kg guy, which from the start tells you that any of his gains are going to be hard fought. He basically, I don't know if he buried himself over these last 4 weeks, but from what I understand, it sounds like he was very much on track with what he had been doing. So this is by no means a diversion from that. He wasn't doing a rest week or anything like that. Was this at the tail end of his rest week?
No, he did a 3-on-1. He did a solid 4-week block. 3-on-1
cool.
off.
Yeah. So, and what did that net him? At least on the day, only 1 watt. So really nothing of consequence. So now it's time for him to decide, is he in a holding pattern? Is he kind of peaked? Is he pushing right up against that potential, or what else can he change? Does he have the time to add more volume? Can his body handle more stress? Because he's at that point where any addition of volume could lift the tide or it could sink the ship. So he's on, shaky. Well, now we're on ground, so no longer in the water, but he has to kind of cautiously play how he moves forward. He may have, I don't know, he may have enough history to base this decision. He may know he can handle quite a bit more. He may know exactly what's going on. So it might be new territory. I don't know.
To give you an idea, so Brandon was at just under 14 hours per week, averaged over 4 weeks. But when he was a pro triathlete, he would do more work than that. But now he's got a full-time job and stuff. So I think that's where, Chad, you're saying he can't just jump back to pro triathlete level of work with all this life stress that he has.
Yeah. So how those two things combine, I think is going to be pretty informative over the coming weeks.
Yeah, I think for sure. I mean, as far as the training volume goes, he could totally handle it. But, combining that with everything else in life is a totally different story. And you guys, if you're not watching the live stream right now, Jonathan has actually been shaving his head this whole time. I feel like we need some kind of narration of this.
People have mixed feelings about it on the live stream. I feel like Jonathan's going to lose his bike handling skills. Just going to be gone.
If he stops right here, he and Simon Clark you couldn't possibly tell them apart.
Okay, let's go to Amber. Amber didn't do barely anything and got a 12 watt increase, which is annoying, but I think it's justified. So Chad, what do you think happened here?
Yeah, so I have a one-word reply. It's duh. I mean, she's been at this for literally years, decades, actually, right? Multiple decades. Has it been 20 years? Yeah.
So I was thinking, Chad, Amber has worked out probably more than any of us consistently since she was 10 years old. And
yeah, exactly.
Did you ever take a break?
A couple years after collegiate swimming, between swimming and cycling. But
okay,
even then, I was doing stuff. So
40 to 30 hour weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah. So her body, her physiology is going to be really responsive to training. As long as she doesn't overdo it, and as long as she has the motivation that's necessary to keep her on a narrow track, then sky's the limit.
So Amber,
and my question for her was simply, and I didn't know this going in, but she's going to talk to this is what's her motivation? I don't know what's driving her right now, because that's definitely going to have some influence on how successful she is.
What is it?
Well, Brandon and I are teammates for Cape Epic, and I'm very, very motivated for that. So anytime I get in a team situation, I want to be the best teammate I can be. So that's a big motivator. And then bigger picture, I'm not racing full time anymore. I retired from pro racing, but I love how I feel in my body when I'm fit. Like it feels good to know that there've been times when I've been injured and I've not been able to ride. And there's this sensation of I just want to go be able to do the climbs that I normally can do. I just, I don't need to be at a really high level, but I just want to have a baseline of feeling really, really capable. So I'm really curious and excited to explore how it feels to just be a more well-rounded athlete. So I have time to address some lingering compensations that I've had from previous injuries. I can really get into some general mobility stuff, functional movement training other than cycling. So that's all stuff I'm excited to explore. And then I'm also excited just to like, I don't know, focus in on the nurturing and fulfilling aspects of fitness and performance, because now there's no fear of failure associated with like an annual looming contract deadline. And so that, I mean, it's very freeing in a way. So I'm really excited to just like be in that mental space. But part of that is feeling good on the bike. So I'm excited about that.
The only failure or fear you should have of failure is about shaving your head, because obviously
Yeah.
this is real. I don't think we should do this anymore. It was a joke, but John was like, "Yep, we're doing it."
I'm pretty good.
There's just too much integrity in this team. Like it's just
Chad will do it.
Yeah. I just did it. So also one thing I wanted to mention with Amber is that she saw a substantial improvement. As a percentage, it was a substantial improvement, not the biggest one of all of us, but a hefty one. She rode on erg, she rode on an H3, but she had a dead power meter. So she was just going off H3 power, but to her credit, she had a dead power meter both times. So she's really keying in on that consistency. Point being, try to keep things consistent, because when you introduce a variable, then you have to wonder, did that variable carry any impact?
Jonathan is still going strong here. This is still in process, you guys.
Okay, let's go with Pete now. Pete,
we're down to Mohawk. Sorry, I just had to say that. We're down to like, we're at Mohawk stage now.
It's looking good, John. Pete
And
got
let me say real quick, what we're going to talk about now is kind of a Pete versus Nate comparison. And it's not a Pete versus Nate competitively so much as they started from the same spot. They have roughly the same body weight. They're, didn't you guys test really close to the same last time?
No, I was 10 watts higher than him.
Oh, okay. Okay. But anyway, you guys are similar. You're similar in a number of ways. So let's watch what happened to one rider and what happened to the other. But
dissimilar in a lot of ways too.
Sure.
So
Sure.
Pete got a massive 19 watt increase from 342 to what is that? 359, 360? Yeah, 360 or 361, somewhere in there. I can't do the math. So that's awesome. He also lost like a bunch of weight. I think he's down to like 190. He's been eating vegan. He looks really good, lost a lot of body fat. I'm sure some muscle too, but he's getting closer to where he's been. His peak before was 400 watt FTP. And so in Reno, he'd probably have to get a 380 watt FTP score. So he's maybe 20 watts off of his peak. And he did slightly less or maybe the same amount of volume than me. We were doing group workouts together. And although his FTP was 10 watts lower, as he'd do the workout, he'd slowly raise the intensity until he'd do each interval 1 watt higher than I was doing. Should we cover John or just keep going? Let's keep going.
I think it's fantastic. Got a great mohawk going on. It's about a 6-inch tall mohawk. I'm going to keep clipping. Pete's fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with Pete, he's the big winner for this one. He had not only the highest raw watts, but as a percentage, he edged out Amber, which is pretty impressive considering he's been doing a lot of work. So I guess it's along the lines of what we'd expect. He's not only been doing a lot of work, he's been doing it right. He's been paying attention to how he feels. He's been escalating his training load at a proper rate, unlike someone we'll talk about soon. And it worked for him. So this was an amount of stress that his body could adapt to, and he nudged it up properly, and he was rewarded with a big bump in power. Again, with watts as high as Pete's already are, this isn't something you're going to consistently see unless you have someone like Pete, who, if to use the house metaphor, has a very high roof and he has a really solid foundation, because much like Amber, he's been doing this for years. He's been training consistently. He's been maintaining heavy loads. He's been racing a lot. He's been after this for quite some time. Little bit of ebb and flow, but mostly flow. So can
I put that in context for a second?
Sure.
So Pete was doing, I think he had like 650 TSS on average, or 600 for the last 4 weeks. But Pete before has done a whole summer of 800 a week consistently.
Yeah.
So when he does that, it's good. This is kind of like, this is kind of like Amber, although Pete is closer to his ceiling, but he did a whole bunch more structured work. Amber did almost no structured work. And I bet you if you had 4 weeks of structure, Amber, you would have got like a 35 watt increase. It would have been crazy.
I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah.
So yay Pete, really well done. Anecdotally, Nate was telling me a story that Pete relayed to him that once he raised his training by 50%, so we're talking, like 400 to a 600 TSS sort of trajectory. Okay. Yeah. And his FTP went down during that training phase, and it stayed low for about 4 weeks. But then after another month, he was as fast as he's ever been.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, a testament to the responsiveness of what Pete can handle. It didn't break him down. He actually reemerged from that the fittest he's ever been, which I understand why anyone, and in this case, Nate, would maybe want to try this. Was this part of your inspiration, Nate, for the big bump?
Nope. He told me that afterwards. Yeah.
And then just a final note on Pete is he tested blind. So interestingly, he didn't look at the watts as a carrot. He had no idea where he was. He just pushed as hard as he could. And magically, he well, not magically, I mean, through hard work, he made it well past the point where he was based solely on feel. So no data input whatsoever.
Actually, he said the opposite. He said he was going to quit, but when I started calling out how close he was, he kept pushing to be able to get the extra to 360.
Okay.
So
yay, group rides.
Yeah, exactly. It helps to have somebody yell in your face.
Really
okay. And then for me, this is frustrating. I went through like all these stages, which I think I should write down of like in my head where I was going to switch to like weight training and stuff. But I did the most training I've ever done, and I got a 9-watt decrease. And I was flying. I was so fast 2 Thursdays before. To give you an example, I was doing in my 15-minute intervals with an attack. What was I doing? I don't know, 345, 350, not very hard, like felt pretty good. I just did something very similar yesterday at 320, and it felt the exact same, which is very, very, very annoying. So Chad, why don't you break this down for everyone? Because I know based on questions, I'm not the only person this has happened to.
Absolutely not. Yeah. So first question is again, with the house metaphor, how high is Nate's roof? Because we know with Brandon, with Amber, with Pete, it's up there. Nate, we don't know. He's an unknown quantity. So we're still working this out. We do know that he has a strong foundation. We do know that he can handle hefty training loads because prior to this, he was doing quite a lot of work and he was benefiting from it. His racing was improving. His FTP was going up. These hard workouts were getting completed to spec. So he's on a good path. He just overdid this a little bit. And I think all he did was he outpaced his ramp rate. And you don't have to be so beholden to a ramp rate that you self-govern too much, but a 50% increase is too high a ramp rate for just about any athlete. I mean, even Pete couldn't tolerate it, at least not for those 4 weeks. Yeah.
And as everyone else knows too, on that 3rd week, I know I was close to like my limit, and I had like a bad night's sleep. And then I started eating poorly, and then I had more bad night's sleep. And then on a workout where I was like, I don't know if I should do this, I got into it. And then I got in a little competition with Pete and pushed like extra hard. And then I just fell apart and crumbled. And then also on that, then I didn't take enough rest, and I tried to get like a Strava KOM. I did everything poorly because I didn't want to, I thought I would, like before when this has happened to me, I bounced back pretty quick, and I thought I would. It's just the idea of listening to your body. And honestly too, Chad, I'm actually kind of happy this happened because I was doing about 14 hours a week on average. So with the recovery week, so a little bit more during the work. And if I would have got a big boost, I would have gone to like 15 or 16 hours.
Sure.
But now I'm pretty happy to like know that I can't handle that much stress with my current lifestyle to be able to bump it back down.
Yeah. And that's a good point. Your current lifestyle. So you've hit a temporary limit, and it might just be that you escalated things too fast. You might, with all your typical life stress, be able to handle this training load just fine. I think you just got there a little too rapidly.
Yeah. So what your point is, I was doing like, I think in the low 700s during my hard weeks, if those would have been maybe 600s for a few months, and then 625s or 650s, and then 700s, maybe this wouldn't have happened to me.
Yeah, it's a safer trajectory, and it's more conservative, and maybe you wouldn't have gotten as fast, but at the same time, you run the risk of what happened, and you burned yourself out.
Okay, so now here's my plan. I'm going to drop down to high volume and not add anything extra. And now the question is, because this happens to a lot of people, what should I do? Should I train with my ramp test FTP that I just scored? And then also, how do I keep myself, or if this happens to people, how do they keep themselves from going into a deep, dark spiral, right? Because 2 things could happen. I could either bump back up pretty quickly, or I could just get worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. So first off, I would stick with your newly assessed FTP. I mean, that's information, again, it's a measure of where you're at right now. So for whatever reason, your body isn't capable of performing at the same level that you were performing previously. So leave it there for now, and then just really closely and very honestly, because you are a self-coach rider, so you are your coach, monitor your next few workouts and just decide, this truly feels too easy. I just had a tough day. I'm on the rebound already. Versus, you know what, I'm going to need to leave my number here for a little while and just kind of ride this out a little more slowly. My body needs time. And then, you can decide, you don't have to commit to an entire loading cycle, 5 weeks if it's in base, or 3 weeks in a build. You can retest whenever you want. You can bump the workouts up whenever you want. Again, it just calls for true honesty on your part. Be honest with yourself and how you're feeling and how you think you're accommodating or dealing with the workouts.
Which I understand that's really hard for a lot of athletes, especially to hold back and look at the whole training plan. And honestly, doing the first couple of workouts, I think the FTP is just right. Like they were hard, but doable. And that is such a kick in the pants, right? But I think what's going to happen, like Pete said, after a block or after 2 blocks, I'll get back up. And I've thank you for everyone else. Steve M being one of them, and other people talk about who they've done this big increase in volume. And it took a couple months, and then like everything came together for their body to absorb it and get used to it.
Yeah, this is how you figure stuff out. I mean, Amber, back me up on that. I'm sure Jonathan too. You guys can relate.
Yeah, you have to dig a hole, to get that super compensation, and you have to just try. Like sometimes you have to dig a little bit too deep a hole and realize that that's too much. I think there was a Bjarne Riis quote, something along the lines of, you don't know how tight you can screw a screw until you break it. I mean, you try it and then, you learn from it. So I think this is a great learning process, because now you have really clearly in your mind what those sensations were, what those kind of red flags were that were warning you that you were doing too much. And this is all of it, nonetheless, is money in the bank. And so giving yourself a little bit of a lower FTP now, according to the RAM test, moving forward with that, you're going to give your body more of a chance to adapt and super compensate again. So I have no doubt that you're going to end up ultimately with a big bump. It's just going to take a little while. Your body is in the process of adapting to this really high load. And that process means that the progress that you see on a daily basis is not going to be linear. We'll go back to that one again. It's not a linear process, right? So this is just like, you can think of it as like taking a step back to get a running start.
And some people might be like, oh, Nate, that was so foolish to do what you did. But this was by design, because we have no races right now. And I've never pushed myself that hard. And I get to sleep in longer right now, because I can just wake up at 7:45 and open you guys have seen it. I do my meeting in bed. Like I just wake up. So if there's any time in my life to be able to play with how much volume I can do, this is a great time to do it. John, are you cold?
Well-timed misstep.
Right. It is cold. Yeah. I lost my ability to podcast, actually.
You got a good head, though. I was worried. I thought you might be lumpy from mountain bike crashes or whatever. You got a nice round head.
One thing I was going to add, Nate, like you're saying right now, for people to take this time as a time to experiment and try something new, this is such a huge opportunity. Chances are you aren't going to get something exactly like this again. You can, that said, you can always choose to do it. You can say, hey, look, I'm just not going to race this spring, or I'm not going to race this summer or something. And you can do this. But right now, everybody has this opportunity. Like, we should be taking advantage of it to try something new. If we do that, we'll probably learn something about ourselves as an athlete. We may not get faster, but I guarantee you the knowledge that you'll have will enable you to get faster. So, because that's like the biggest thing with training. Some athletes, like professional athletes, they'll have entire teams of scientists dedicated to making them faster. And they'll just look at every possible angle, a 360-degree perspective on an athlete. For most of us, we have other demands and other things going on in our lives that don't allow us to take that sort of a comprehensive look. But right now, at least, is a good opportunity for you to look at it from a different perspective. So give it a shot. Triathletes, try the crit plan. Crit riders, try something that is going to be long, steady distance, like something that's like the 40K TT plan or something. It's going to make you at least figure something out about yourself. Right, Amber?
Totally. And one of the things that we've talked about before is, we talk a lot about the dangers of overreaching and the dangers of overtraining. So overreaching is very, very different from overtraining. And it's a matter of severity, but also duration. So what Nate's done here is experimented taken it a step too far, realize that. But what's happening is because you ramp tested and the ramp test revealed that you've dug a very, very deep hole, it's going to adjust your FTP so that the work you're doing now, like you said, it feels challenging but manageable. So by retesting, you're actually dialing back a little bit, which is basically going to protect you from doing too much. And so I just kind of want to step back and acknowledge that we've talked about there are cases where if you continue to push really hard, you don't dial it back, and you just keep on going, you can go from overreaching to overtraining, and that overtraining syndrome, that can be pretty severe. I mean, that can have really serious hormonal consequences, and that can take months to years to recover from. But what Nate's doing is very different from that. He gave himself an opportunity to overreach, knowing that if this proved to be a mistake, there was plenty of time to come back from it. And I think that that's an important distinction to make. And this is not something that we would necessarily suggest for anybody in the middle of a race season where you don't have time to, you don't have any buffer if you make that mistake. But there's a big difference here between the overreaching and the overtraining. And I just want to make sure that we point that out.
So a bad thing that I could do is for these next workouts, if I start failing a bunch of them, or I could have came in and been like, you know what, I was probably at 360 before, but my workouts at the end, so I'm just going to put it there and then start struggling and have all of my training be struggling and get worse and worse and worse. That's where I should probably just turn the lights off, have full week or two off, and come back.
Exactly. I wanted to mention that too. So if you get into these early workouts and with this lowered FTP, you're still flat and you're still having a hard time getting through them, that's the telltale sign that even with the lower FTP, your body needs more recovery than that.
Mm-hmm. And you didn't let your ego get in the way, and you went ahead and adjusted your FTP accordingly. And that's really, really important.
It'd be a shame if ego got in the way of you getting faster. Right. And but it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And this is a great opportunity for us to step back and look at our performance objectively and just say, hey, this is all about anchoring my training to the best point. It's not about making myself, feel better because of a bigger number.
Yeah. Today is broken finger +1, which is one of the hardest. Yeah, exactly. So I just have to keep that in my mind that even if that one's tough, it's going to be tough for everybody, even if they're fresh.
Yeah.
Some workouts are just really hard.
So if we circle back to the initial questions, let's answer them a little more succinctly. So first off, how do you notice when you think you're doing too much? I think the best indicator is mood. And yeah, you're going to have a sour mood from day to day, but if you have too many flat days in a row and your motivation is waning, and this is a consistent thing, I think that's probably the best indicator that you're doing a little too much or ramping things a little too quickly. Mm-hmm. And then Nate asks, how long do you think it will take to get back? And this depends really on two things, both your training history and the severity of your overreach. So if you've got a big history upon which you've built this level of fitness, that's one thing. If you're new to training, that's entirely another. And then how far you overreach. Nate nipped it in the bud. He caught it pretty early, and he's taking steps to fix things right now rather than what we just described, pushing forward regardless. And then finally, how do we avoid going into a deep, dark hole? I think most of that is based on experience, and that experience is either older or newly acquired. So it can be based on historical, learnings. It can be something that you just now figured out, like Nate did. And then metrics are valuable. You can't solely rely on them. You have to pay attention to the subjective as well. But ramp rates and TSS loads, they're useful tools, absolutely. And finally, listen to your body. It's straightforward and it sounds cliche, and it is cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. And on that note, as much as I would like to say there are reliable recovery metrics out there, I'm still struggling to find one that I can rely on closely enough. I've been using a device that measures heart rate as I sleep. It's giving me sleep quality feedback and duration, and tells me if I'm snoring, tells me what my heart rate variability is, tells me what my waking rate is, tells me how it trends over the evening. And man, I can't make any useful sense of this stuff because it hasn't correlated in any useful manner to how I feel and the workouts that I can do on the day. So as much as I'd like to say, you can tell if you're recovered and ready to go by using such and such device, still working on that one.
Chad, if I could, so I have three things really quick, and the last thing will transition us into the next section, if that's okay. The first point is to totally back you up on that. And the thing that I want everybody listening to this that's using some sort of recovery tracking device, I'm not saying none of them work, but I am saying that it's very easy to become influenced by them. And as a result, our perception totally changes so something says that you're green for the day, that you're good to go. So you're good to go, and you tell yourself you're good to go. There's a lot of power in just telling yourself that you're good to go. And on the other side of things, there's a lot of power in telling yourself that you're not good to go. And it can have a profound impact on your training when maybe it's actually just a bad measurement, or maybe that data isn't a true governor on your performance. So whatever data we have, we always have to be objective with it. And that's definitely the case with recovery data, because there's still a lot of leaps being taken to try to connect those to performance. So that's point number one. Point number two, something to point out that I think a lot of people miss with my training. So I really hardly rode the bike at all for 3 weeks almost. And in that period of time, I still did like 2 mountain bike rides a week. And they were like, I would pedal hard. I would do all that stuff. That's a super good example of what happens to a lot of people when they go into the summertime and they say, oh no, I'm done with structured training. Then they do, like, when they ride hard. But then after a while, when some sort of measurement point comes up, whether it's riding with your friends, whether it's a time up a certain hill, something like that, or a race, we're always shocked. We shouldn't be, but we're always shocked at the fact of how much fitness we lost. And for me, building up into that, I had consistent training. And once you get up on the wave, for me personally, I really start to ride that wave, and I start to improve and improve and improve, and it keeps going. So for me, I was riding that wave. And then I kind of did the normal summertime drop off where you just ride kind of like how you want. And that was proof to me of the fact that it doesn't take a long time to see yourself completely drop off that wave. So remember that. If you're thinking of stopping with structure, you don't need a ton of structure. If you do 3 intentionally structured rides a week, even, you can get a ton of value out of that. But don't do it and then expect to come back at the same level. It just doesn't happen. It's just how it works. The final point here is that on the ramp test, I'm sure that if I was doing that ramp test solo, or first of all, I wouldn't have done that ramp test, right? I would have just kind of guessed and gone through and probably let my ego drive. But instead, because of group workouts, I did that ramp test. And I think that group workouts is a hugely important thing for everybody listening to this, because it provides that accountability partner where you have to be accountable to somebody else to show up and to get it done. So it was hugely helpful for me. And as a result, now my training is going to be better because I did that. So it's just use group workouts really helps.
Kind of on that note, as far as the ramp test goes, this is 2 times in a row I've had to do it on a Monday, and Mondays are far and away my hardest day because the weekends are always taxing in one form or another. So I come into Monday, that's part of it, often enough.
For those that weren't listening to the podcast, Nate just did a drinking sign. So
yeah. So my thinking, but I know from actual data is I'm probably not going to be able to do as well as I could do, but I know that I can. And really what I found 2 times in a row now is that you dread it a little more. The earlier minutes are a little tougher because the fatigue seeps them out a little earlier, but I reach the same point. Your body can only do what it can do. Even if your mind's not fully behind it, we're talking a couple minutes of high level effort. You can get there regardless. I mean, a little bit flat is not an excuse to not do the ramp test. You're still going to get good data.
Mm-hmm.
If you like that video, you should subscribe to our channel. There's more where that came from. And even like the video down below with a thumbs up or leave us a comment.
If you want to see race analysis videos, click right over here. And if you want to get your coaching questions answered, click over here.
And if you want to become a faster cyclist, head over to TrainerRoad.com. It works. Trust us.
Just trust us.
We guarantee it.
Oh yeah, or your money back.
It's true. Take us up on it.